Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Flixation, the podcast where we talk about the films that we are fixated on. I'm Aidan,
I'm Anna Grace.
and today we are talking about Black Widow. Yes, I'm so excited for this one. This movie has taken up a lot of space in my brain
Oh,
mentally
definitely.
since I saw Iron Man 2 at the age of 13, really, but especially since the coronavirus pandemic delayed it for a year.
Mhm.
But we finally saw it, and it's
We
really good,
did.
and I'm excited to talk about it.
Me too.
So, feminism wins today.
Definitely. Finally.
Well, before we start asking our opinions on it, we need to give a quick recap. I read the Wikipedia recap for this right before this
Good.
time. Refreshed. Okay, so Black Widow basically opens with young Natasha and young Yelena living in Ohio with a family of fake Russian spies, and their parental figures are played by Melina, who's played by Rachel Weisz, and Alexei, who's played by David Harbour. And then, of course, Natasha is, they have younger actors now, but Natasha is Scarlett Johansson, and Yelena will be played as an adult by Florence Pugh. So they're posing as an American family in Ohio, and then they get called back, and the first action sequence of the film is an escape scene where they're going to Cuba. Yeah, also we're getting to spoilers, obviously, but you should not be listening to this if you haven't seen the movie, so we're just going to keep going. So then after they make their escape, it cuts to post-Civil War. Natasha is alone after the fall of the Avengers. She meets Taskmaster for the first time and then sees that her sister has sent her vials of a drug that counteracts a brainwashing chemical that's being used against the widows, which are basically the expanded program of all of the agents like Natasha and Yelena, of these young women that have basically been human trafficked, forcibly sterilized, and trained to become assassins. So then Nat and Yelena meet up again and are kind of planning to go against Dreykov, who is the person who used to be in charge of the widows and the Red Room, who Natasha thought she had killed, but she actually has not. So he's back and they have to go fight him. And so to do that, they round up their old big family, Elena and Alexei. So they break Alexei out of prison and then go to Melina's house. At some point, you find out that she is the one who invented the drug that was used on the widows. And then the last probably 40 minutes of the movie are them going to Dreykov's ship, freeing the widows, killing Dreykov, fighting, and then freeing Taskmaster, who you find out is Dreykov's own daughter that he brainwashed to become an assassin. Yeah, and it ends with this giant aerial battle in the sky with lots of awesome things that I don't know how they all survived, but honestly, I don't care. And that's essentially what happens in Black Widow. Just out of the gate, did you think the movie worked? What were your initial thoughts about it?
I loved it. So I definitely miss the homebound, grounded Marvel movies, kind of like Civil War. I just kind of miss, space is great. Space fighting, so much fun. I love those stories. But I really did miss, like Captain America Winter Soldier. It's, it's our world. I thought it worked really well. It was definitely the closure I needed from that. I needed to see her one more time, and this is a great way to see her and say goodbye. I do wish that we got this right after Civil War came out. But, we can't have a feminist movie at the right time, It has to be later, obviously.
Yeah.
Also, everyone's like, it's a feminist movie. I'm like, it's just a movie that's, not biased. But anyways, I think that it feels dark because it's about, the Red Room when it has to do with human trafficking and brainwashing and abuse and targeting and harming little girls. It makes it seem a lot darker and more real because that happens to a degree in real life. So it's almost, at least when I watched it, I was more, maybe not scared, but I guess affected emotionally as a woman, more so than like the conflict even like with Thanos just because I'm like, this happens. I mean, obviously they're not brainwashed into becoming assassins, but in a degree, you know, to take the conversation in like a darker area. I mean, it felt scarier. The stakes felt higher almost. But yeah, I thought it was great. I really liked it. I loved seeing, you know, the family together, what it means for each of the different characters, how Alexei, you know, was holding on to the past, how Melina was so proud of her work, but she also was guilty for what she did, but also she felt like she didn't have a choice. You know, Yelena, who everyone collectively agrees that is just incredible. Great character, one of the best Marvel characters of, you know, in my opinion. Played by Florence Pugh, who also, like, I love so much. She really plays Amy March and Yelena Belova flawlessly. Like, I don't know how she does that. Also, Midsommar. Anyways, off the point.
I didn't finish Midsommar, but I tried for her, but I just couldn't.
Tried. I can't get through the whole thing. I just watched, like, parts of it, and I'm like, she really killed it.
I think a lot about the part where she's walking through the field crying. I know that's become a meme, but also that's astounding acting, and I really felt that when I was watching it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's just a great film. Yeah, and I'll pose a question later about the portrayal of the two, like, I guess, the two leading ladies, but I want to know, what did you think first?
Yes. Well, like you, I have lots of comments about a lot of things. It's not a unique take by any means to say that I think when it was a spy thriller / a family drama, it was doing really good things.
Mm-hmm.
I really just enjoyed it. But I've loved Black Widow. She's been one of my favorites since the very beginning, and which, like a lot of women. So this is why we should have had this movie in 2017, which I want to have that conversation at some point, but I feel like we're going to exhaust that point because it is just so apparent that this movie should have been made earlier.
Yeah.
And bad on Marvel for thinking that a female superhero movie would not have made money, but we got it eventually. And ScarJo has done quite a bit to get this movie made. But I just really enjoyed it. Florence Pugh obviously steals the show. I mean, there's almost no point in saying it because it's just so obvious.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, she didn't win that Oscar for Little Women, but she should for Yelena.
I agree.
She should have for Little Women, but that's not the point.
Mm-hmm.
I think my biggest issue with it was that the villain part was a little bit underbaked. I think.
Mm-hmm. I have some thoughts on
that.
But
we can talk about that later, and I don't really care fundamentally because I just really enjoyed this movie. It looked beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed. You could tell it was made by a woman. Which I would imagine you as women enjoyed.
100%.
Like their costumes didn't look suffocating. They were, the way that they were filmed was really strong. They were also allowed to show emotions and
a concept.
Talk about periods, and which we should talk about that joke later. But
yes,
it was
good.
I just enjoyed it, and it was a lot of what I've been waiting on, even though I don't think it was perfect by any means.
Definitely.
I do want to say, before we get into anything else, that I think quite possibly the worst sin that this movie commits is making me think that Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, would want to be buried in Ohio.
Yeah. Like, I get that's, like, where her, like, quote, like, you know, where her home was for those 3 years, but...
Yeah, you know, I get whatever. She had some, like, idyllic Midwestern childhood for 3 years, but Ohio...
Why would you ever want to be in Ohio, especially when you're dead?
I think that people who grew up in Ohio understand.
I think they also understand. I mean, we can't say anything because we grew up in Tennessee. But we have Dolly Parton.
Tennessee is Dolly Parton. It's fun. And a lot of lakes.
That's true.
And some mountains.
That's true. We have a couple things.
Some things.
Yeah.
In summary, at least Black Widow wasn't in Delaware. But that's about all we can say.
Yeah. I think it might have made sense for her to be buried, like, I don't know. I think I like the idea of maybe turning the grounds where the old Avengers compound was into a memorial for fallen Avengers.
But Anna Grace, that would have required her getting brain space for dying in the same breath as Tony Stark. We can get into, I also feel like it's just going to come when we start talking about how this movie should have come in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to talk about my feelings about Endgame and specifically the difference in the way Natasha was treated, as thinking of the movie as a memorial to her character in this versus in Endgame. But we can get back to that later.
Yeah, definitely. We can talk about, I do want to talk about, the villain, because I don't see Taskmaster as the villain. And so people are like, Taskmaster wasn't even in it, wasn't even the big bad. I'm like, that wasn't the point. The villain is the Red Room and Dreykov. Taskmaster was also a victim of the Red Room. I think that Taskmaster was, I think that she was marketed as the villain because they needed a face. They needed to have, a flashy action figure or something, a cool fight to put in the trailer. It made sense to market Taskmaster as being the villain, and it being Dreykov's daughter was, it could have been, like, it was a plot twist. Did you kind of expect it? Maybe. I actually didn't, because I was like, either Dreykov's daughter did live, and that'll be, like, a whole thing, or she really did die, and that is Nat's, like, one of her biggest regrets.
I think I figured out that she wasn't actually dead after they brought it up several times, because that's...
It's very like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, we can talk more about Black Widow trying to get into really heavy topics and also Marvelify them and not actually get into how dark they are, but that was I don't think there was a point in it, and maybe it's just because I love Nat, that I feel like they wouldn't have brought up her killing a child as many times as they did if she wasn't alive. But her actually being Taskmaster was something I only... Yeah, it was something that I kind of realized like 10 seconds before it happened in the movie.
Exactly. I know, because I was like, Dreykov's daughter, it makes sense. She's probably alive. I didn't expect that she was actually Taskmaster.
Yeah. I know that the nerd boys were really upset at what they did to Taskmaster and feel like it was not good. I would just like to say it was a fun plot twist, and it's fine.
Also, you're missing the point. The villain was...
I'm sorry, you're missing the point. That Dreykov is the villain. Yeah, this is a similar thing to what I say whenever anyone talks about the Mandarin reveal in Iron Man 3 of... Well, this one is not funny, but about Iron Man 3, I would say, okay, it was funny. And also much less racist and much more of a commentary on the way our world works. But also true for Black Widow. Much more true to how our world works, that it would be a female victim who's being forced to do this rather than just a man, I guess. But I also don't think that Taskmaster was the main villain. I think she could have been fleshed out a bit more. I think the biggest weakness of this movie is that the villain feels tacked on. I don't know if you got this impression, but when I saw Dreykov, I thought when you first see him in the pictures during the title sequence, I was like, is that Harvey Weinstein? I think he really... Oh my gosh. Which I think that was a clear decision to make him look like Harvey Weinstein, probably. But he just gives general male abuser vibes. But I think he was a little bit hokey in the sense of whenever he was saying that the only resource the world has too much of, girls. Some of the lines like that were a little on the nose. I think the writer was a man. The writer was a man, which we can talk about the period joke in a minute, because that's the writer was a man. But I think the movie is also more about the women, so emotionally, I don't really care that we didn't explore the male villain more, but I do wish that he was more written with more nuance, because the issues that he represents in the movie are very difficult and heavy and have a lot of layers, and it kind of just made him generic woman hater. That's very fair. And like, definitely
I think the most important thing that the movie needed to do in terms of story and what it's centered around was Natasha, her relationship with her family, her remorse over leaving and abandoning the widows, and what she wants to do to fix it. And so I think that focusing more on her past in terms of her family and also helping people is more important than like really fleshing out that villain. Because also it's a villain that we don't need to, that it's a villain in terms of we all know of at least, the scary man with too much power that abuses women. We don't really have to guess a ton on filling in the blanks on who he is. What matters more is what he represents. And I think that you're right, it works. And it's still good. But yeah.
I will also say I did double check. There are 2 male writers and 1 female writer on the Black Widow screenplay. So
I don't understand why they didn't.
What we saw.
Yeah, I don't get why they didn't explicitly look for a female writer.
I don't know.
I feel like they should have done that.
Well, I mean, I think that's a broader problem with writers' rooms. Because they didn't.
It's still good.
I mean, when they put Captain Marvel together, they had a male-female directorial team, which felt like they didn't trust the woman that they hired to do a good job with their movie about their first woman hero, even though they were still trying to get their Wonder Woman points that they could have had if they'd put this movie out in 2016.
Exactly.
You know what? Why don't we just go ahead and I think we should just go ahead and get it came out too late out of the way, because I think we're just going to keep saying it. And I wanted to have that at the end with our more meta conversations about what this movie is. But I think we just need to get it out now.
Let's do it.
And then I would like to address the period joke, and then we can move on to other things.
So yeah, it came too late. It was out way too late.
It came too late.
It did.
Marvel didn't believe a Black Widow-led movie can make money for some reason, despite all of their female fans petitioning for it for years, and also Black Widow kind of being an object of male sexual desire. So for lack of a better word, I don't know. Her just being a male object, and so they would have gone to watch it too. So I don't really know at what point they thought it would make money.
No,
I'm glad we finally
got it. They had
it.
to release the cinematic masterpiece of Thor: Dark World before. I hate on that. I actually do like Thor: Dark World.
I think that the parts that have Thor and Loki in it are great in that movie, and the rest of it is really bad. So it just comes out to be meh.
It's meh. But yeah.
They released a second Ant-Man film.
And they're like, this is the girl boss movie we need. And I'm like, you say Ant-Man and the Wasp, but
it's Ant-Man and you just put the Wasp on it.
Yeah. Not deserved better, and it would have been better then. But it's still good now.
We got it. I'm happy. I wish they would just say, yeah, we should have done this before. We messed up. We're evolving. Because really, the legacy of Black Widow is her going from just being an object in whatever the men need at the moment to becoming an actual female character. But yeah, it just should have come later. I guess we'll try not to say that again, but it can't. It might come up again. I'm sorry if it does. Marvel was sexist, and they're trying to retcon that they weren't, but they were.
Yeah.
And they dropped the ball. But we've had female villains on movie 17 and a female lead on movie 21, and now here we are. So
yeah.
On the subject of male writers, I think this kind of fits. I really enjoyed the period joke scene. Although I think that's another one of what we're playing with this movie, where it's going back and forth between talking about really dark things and also Marvel-fying them. So if you don't remember the period joke, I feel like I should explain it. Alexei makes a really dumb, tired thing that every woman has heard at once in their life, of having valid emotions because of something dumb that a man has done. And Alexei then asking, oh, are you on your period? And then Yelena proceeds to explain in detail how she was forcibly sterilized, and Nat chimes in, and it's played for laughs, which I think is both kind of it kind of feels like something you might have heard in a Guardians movie, which is maybe not great since you're talking about something so heavy, but also it was a funny way to reverse that typical lazy male joke that it reversed the line in Ultron and the typical lazy male thing of blaming women's valid feelings when they mess up on their periods. It was something that made the women laugh.
Yeah, I honestly didn't have an issue with it. I thought it was funny. I liked it.
So the story behind the line, I also forgot to say, is I think one of the male writers wrote the period joke, and then all of the women involved were like, absolutely not. And then Florence Pugh improv'd.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah.
I love that so much because it's funny because it was very in character because she's very sarcastic, but it's not like, I am strong female character, therefore all my personality is sarcasm and being mean. It was just, that's her genuine personality. I think it worked very well. I thought it was funny because it was just, this is how, graphic and, it's hardcore. For civilization,
it's really hardcore.
It's very hardcore. And so I actually really liked it, and the whole tacked on good. She was like, I was about to start talking about fallopian tubes, and I was like, this is incredible. I liked it.
I loved it.
It's incredible. I love Florence.
You know what? I also just think men should be warned in the future that if you want to make a lazy, tasteless joke about our periods, be prepared for us to start talking about fallopian tubes.
I'll start doing it.
You asked for it. I don't know what to tell you. So, it's a funny story. A little side note. I do think it's a little bit weird that I think the male writer that wrote it had intentions to make Alexei seem sexist by writing it, but he also still wrote it. So, we're taking the wins as we get them. Jumped around in my notes a little bit. I do want to say also that I love the Smells Like Teen Spirit cover.
Oh my gosh, it was so good. I was okay. So not even joking. I was almost more emotional about just the beginning credits with that song. It was just so intense and so sad.
It was really intense.
I was getting really emotional already, and then some of the heavier stuff later on in the movie, I wasn't as upset. I was upset, but I wasn't as moved. I guess it was just the music that made it worse, but it was so good. It was incredible. I think really that good. Cover, I think she made it to the top 10 on iTunes or something, and I was like, oh
yeah, it was number 1 on the alternative chart.
That's incredible. I have it on my playlist right now.
I've been playing it on repeat.
Oh yeah, it's okay, time to imagine myself in this song, just being angry on my way to work to go make waffles for 7 hours.
I was moving out of my apartment and I was listening to it, and it's kind of echoey in there because I moved everything out of it, and I was just.
It's a good song, man. It's good.
It's really
pretending I'm in the end scene of Endgame and I'm helping fight, and then that song's on the background and I have powers, and I'm just oh, you hurt Bucky, okay, time to die, and I just take out Ebony Maw. That's my daydream right now. So it's getting me.
On one of the timelines that happened.
Yes, on one of the timelines that happened, I did in fact have powers, and I protected Bucky Barnes from Ebony Maw in Endgame, and I took him down easy because I'm super powerful in this timeline. So thank you.
Exactly. It's a great timeline.
Oh yeah, it's great. I wish I was in it right now. It'd be great. No, I talked with this kid I babysit about how mad I am that I don't have superpowers. I'm still mad about it. I don't think I'll ever not be mad about it. Anyways, that's not the point. What we were saying. Oh yeah, that song. It's great. It's a good one.
It's really good.
So yeah, the opening credits were immaculate, which actually helps me go on to my question because we saw it in the theaters, so I can't go back and rewatch this. But Yelena knew that it was all a cover, right? Because in that conversation, she was crying. She was like, these were the best years of my life, and you're telling me it wasn't real. Which, did she mean it wasn't real in terms of you guys didn't feel anything either, or did she really not know that it was fake?
I think at least my reading of that line was I think she cognitively knew that. I think that they told her, and she obviously lived at some point not there, because she was,
that's what I always thought,
6 or 7, and they'd only been there for 3 years. But I think she was so young that was her reality.
Yeah, I think that's what I thought too. And then I was like, I think someone, I'm on TikTok. I think someone made an edit where it's like almost like she's finding out for the first time that it wasn't real. And I was like, she knew, because like she was in the Red Room. She knew that it was all a front, but I think it just felt so real to her that she was upset that it didn't feel real to them either. But I mean, obviously it did. They just weren't telling her, or like they just didn't want to accept that. But yeah, so what do you think about, do we get more from Yelena than Nat in this movie?
That was actually what I was wanting to get to next as well.
Yes.
I want to get into the family dynamics. So I think I'm of two minds about it. So I think obviously it's setting up for Yelena to be a character now. So it is a lot of Yelena, and what I want to get to after we talk about this is the issue of Nat being dead. So I think it does give more to Yelena because she's the one of the two of them that has a future. But I think they're written about equally, but Florence Pugh is she's very forceful on screen.
Yeah.
But I also think, and I think the director, I think Kate Shortland understands this, which I was enjoying, but I also kind of relate to this with Nat. I think Nat is fundamentally a carer. I know she's really ruthless and can fight really well and has been through a lot in her life. And this could also be me trying to put a feminist reading on her just being the female Avenger for years and being, the Swiss Army knife basically of whatever every movie needs, which is a separate issue we could talk all day about. But I think the reading that I choose to have of it, because I do see her as a feminist character, is I think she's just someone who takes care of people. So I think her role in this is more, and I think ScarJo's giving it her all, because she's just a person that just does the thing that needs to be done, which is a good part because of her trauma. And I think the movie and this gives her space to feel the emotional impacts of what she's seeing, but it also is, a lot of it is her being the emotional core of the movie. She's absorbing Yelena's feelings and saving the other girls and trying to help Taskmaster and doing all of these things, which I think is her character, but I think it's a more, I was going to say unrewarding, but I don't think that's the right word, but I think it's just a less noticeable form of strength. But yeah. I enjoyed it, but I also think the movie should have given her more. But with her being dead, it's a little bit difficult to
definitely,
because it's also serving as a memorial to her, because it didn't come out in 2017 like it should have.
It did not. No, I think you're right, and I also choose to believe that she is a feminist character, and she does fall into that role as like a carer, because as much as she's been through, she has a lot of love for people around her, at least in the sense of she wants to take care of them. And I think that can be read as she's just going to be, the fill-in maternal character. She needs to be what men need her to be. You can read it like that if you want to. I think in recent movies, she's moved away from that trope, especially in Endgame and in Civil War too. She just wants people to stick together. And in Age of Ultron, people have the issue with the line of I'm always picking up after you boys, and she picks up the shield on the road. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be that deep. It can be if you want.
I feel like this is probably going to be a good segue into our Endgame conversation, but I do want to say that I think that line speaks to me emotionally as a woman. I feel like a lot of my life is spent picking up after dumb boys, but also written by a man. It's like, if that line had been written by a woman, it would have been a rallying cry, but since it was written by a man, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah. So part of me is like, Is it that deep? It can be. Also, I agree, though.
But I also loved watching them be together and free at the end.
It had a happy ending.
It did.
Kind of.
Until the Russos ruined it.
Right. But, like, okay, look at the movie on its own. It had a happy ending.
It did.
Like, a relative happy ending. And it was so nice because you don't see that a lot in Marvel anymore. Like, it's either bittersweet or it's just not happy at all. And, like, I know it seems cliche and it's like, Anna Grace, it has to be sad to have depth. No, I'm really happy that, like, they won in the end. Yeah, she's still on the run, but she got away. Like, they won. Stuff. Yeah, I'm like, they did it. They took down Dreykov and they got the antidote, and, you know, they're taking down the Red Room. They split up, but, you know, they reconnected. They're family again.
Yeah.
Like, it was a happy ending, and I think that's why I came away the movie too, just being content, because I was like, okay, I got to say goodbye to one of my favorite characters. She got some of the, you know, story and character development that she deserved. We met some great new characters, and they had a happy ending. They saved the day in the end. I feel great.
Yeah, that's how I agree about that. And I like left the theater watching that one, and my overwhelming sense of more than anything was just, I know that this is going to be one that I have as a comfort movie for years. I know when this one is available for release, not for $30 on Disney Plus.
Yes.
That I'm going to buy it, and I'm just going to watch it all the time when I feel my feelings. And that's perfect. And maybe, I mean, I know people have been comparing it to The Winter Soldier, and like most of us would probably say that The Winter Soldier is technically a better movie or whatever, but this movie just did some justice to a character that hasn't been done justice to in the series yet, and gave us a cute sister dynamic. And also, they've dealt with enough sad stuff. There's enough sad stuff baked into this movie that they don't need to lose.
You don't need to add. Yeah, you don't need to make it worse. Please don't. They've already lost so much of themselves, and they finally regained some of it. I think they ended it great.
I also want to say, before we switch from character stuff to, I don't want to have a long endgame conversation, but a brief one. But I did want to also give Rachel Weisz and David Harbour shout outs too, because their characters were very entertaining and nuanced.
I do like how Melina was like, you have to understand, I was through the Red Room, what was it, like 4 times before she was even born? Yeah, you can be like, Melina, how could you do this? You developed this, you know, chemical. This is your fault. You gave it to them. But I mean, if you take from the point of view of her whole purpose in life has been to serve them, she had a choice, but like, did she have a choice? You know?
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's also a comment on both your ability to work within, like when you've been drawn into a system like that where you have no real power to get out, and you've been brainwashed and your life is being controlled. It's both a comment on your actual options and the choices that you have and usually don't have. It's both a comment on that, and I think it's also a little bit of a comment too, I think, on, well, I'll just say, so for listeners, a little bit of context, I'm working with a Holocaust commission this summer. So I think at first I kind of saw that and I was like, oh, she's a scientist who's done something terrible and who has mentally distanced herself from it, which is what a lot of the Nazi scientists at IG Farben did. And I saw her as that character, and I was like, oh, she's committed an atrocity and doesn't want to admit it because it suits her. But then you get deeper into it and realize that she's controlled by them too, and that it's not a choice that she had, in the sense that she wanted money or power or something, and so she chose to commit an atrocity. It's that she was in limited circumstances and didn't feel like she could get out. But she does ultimately decide when she has her family back that she wants to be on the side for good, and she wants to take down the system so no one has to endure it again.
Definitely. Also, we need to talk about how that movie's going to just like revive like hair braiding for the next year.
Oh, so many braids.
I've already tried most of the hairstyles. My hair, listeners, if you haven't seen me, is like crazy curly, so I can't do half of them. But I did Yelena's power ponytail in the battle where it's like two ponytails, you know? It was really fun. Sorry. That was exciting. So I really hope
should have done that before.
What?
I should have done that before I cut my hair off. Sad.
Oh, you could still do it. You can do some of the like Nat's like two braids here with everything down because there's like the symbol and the like white uniform.
They were trying some things with the braids.
They were, and I love them a lot actually.
I love them too. I think I don't really feel like Nat's final battle braid. That was a little messy for me, but that was the only one.
Yeah, I loved them. I think it's fun. Like part of me, I just love the idea of they're about to go fight on like the big ship in the air, but they're like, wait, give me like 15 minutes. I had to do this really cool intricate braid I saw on Pinterest one time. Like, give me a minute. And like, they like
from memory.
Yeah, from memory. I like that idea. I think it's cool.
I love them. That's what happens when girls make movies, okay? Listen.
Yes, we get cool hair.
We all know. I remember thinking with the two braids, at first I was like, girl, why is your hair down for this fight? And I was like, oh, she took care of the important hair.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the hair you need out of your face, and the rest of it is just kind of back there.
Yeah.
In summary, if women are doing their own hair to go into battle, they will not have a blowout on their hair before they go into battle. It's going to be out of the way, probably in a braid, because braids are a very secure hairstyle.
Yeah, and they look cool as hell. So
they do look cool. Yeah. So I think another thing we have been talking around a while is that Natasha is dead in present MCU time.
Cries.
And I kind of want to talk about the post-credit sequence because I loved that I loved the last shot of Natasha walking off. Even though you know where that journey ends, the last shot of her walking off to go rally the Avengers again because she has to clean up after everyone and also take care of everyone. Because that's how she was written, but more as this movie understands and as we understand it. That's just who she is. She just processes her own emotions by taking care of other people.
Yeah.
And leading other people. And she's a strong queen. And so we see her happy and with that blonde bob actually working in a way that it did not in Infinity War, which I agree. Just when you have women involved, they just work better.
Yes.
Even though we know how that journey ultimately ends, it's a beautiful tribute. And then I think the post-credit scene, I know they had to set up with Julia Louis-Dreyfus coming. I wish they hadn't.
Well, that was supposed to come out before Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so that was supposed to be the first time we saw Valentina.
I know, but I don't really know if we needed to know on screen that she was contacted by her as much as we needed her to just give Natasha a funeral scene, which is what that was doing.
Yeah, honestly, I think it would even be cool if we had just that funeral scene just be her visiting her sister, and then later on we can even
another one later
there if we need to.
I'd be fine with 2 post-credit scenes.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I just think that, letting Yelena have a moment without Valentina being there would be nice.
That's what I wanted. I also I saw someone say this on Twitter, and I have now chosen to adopt it, that I think that Yelena did not survive the snap, and that is why Natasha jumped. Because she wanted her baby sister back. Yeah. Because that is more believable to me than what we saw.
I think that it was in character for Nat to jump. I still wish she didn't, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, her whole thing was, I want to get the world back to the way it was. I want to get everyone back together. I've been trying to do this for 5 years. I can finally do it. This has been my mission. So I think you're right. I think it makes sense that if Yelena, dusted, then that was definitely like her time.
I think Natasha jumping makes sense. I think it made sense from Natasha's point of view, me reading her as a feminist character because I'm a woman and
want to see her as someone relatable to me. I think it made sense because her whole arc is feeling like she needs to atone for the sins of her past.
Yep.
And I think this movie is her actually. Obviously, her previous work in the Avengers has also done that, but I think this is specifically she's fixing the specific things that she was traumatized by.
Exactly.
And the specific reason that she did the things that she's ashamed of. So this is her actually righting the wrongs. And so I think the movie, it made sense for her to feel guilty because that's also part of it, is she just continually feels it. But I think the problem was, and not to be lazy and say if it had been written by a woman, it would have been better. But I feel like no one in the Avengers movies, she felt like an afterthought because no one ever said to her, you have atoned for your sins. And they didn't explain well enough the attachment she feels to Clint's family. And if they'd explained Yelena, that would have helped. And I just also can't forgive them for the male grief scene that comes after her dying in lieu of her actually getting a funeral or memorial of any kind. The bench throwing and weird yelling with one tear was quite possibly the most male thing we've seen in Marvel.
Probably. Aside from, like, the many, many, many ass shots. Which, I think I made sure to look out for them. I think there was, like, one or two. But it was less of, let's objectify Scarlett Johansson's butt, and more of, we want the, like, edgy shot of her legs moving, and her butt just happens to be attached to them kind of thing. Yeah. So it wasn't, like, explicit, like, in The Winter Soldier when she, like, hits the dude, like, at the very beginning with, like, the bar and then walks away and you just see her ass. It's different. So I'll allow it.
Yeah. I mean, well, there's also, I think this movie shows that none of the ladies skip leg day, which is different than objectifying them. But there's also a hero shot, which I think is more what they were getting with these, of you can shoot from a lower position or, like, shoot someone's legs and it makes them look strong and tall. Exactly. And I think that's more of what this movie is generally going for. But I think it's also a little bit winking because Kate Shortland definitely knows how we've been watching Black Widow for the last 10 years, which I also appreciated because
I do too.
You could see the print of the way she hasn't been understood in the past.
For sure. But, like,
yeah,
what I want to know is, why didn't she tell the Avengers about her little Russian family? Did the Russo brothers just not know? But they plan movies very far ahead.
I think that they did not think about this movie. I genuinely do.
Probably not.
I also think this movie was an afterthought, and I do not. I think that's why Russian family was never mentioned.
I think so too. And, like, despite it still being, like, an afterthought, it was still well made, well crafted, and well thought out for the most part.
Yeah.
It's definitely up there in my Marvel movie rankings.
I really love it. But I'm biased because I feel like it was a good feminine tribute to our one of our favorite lady characters. No disrespect to Brie Larson or to Captain Marvel, because
I like that movie. I like her. I think it's fine.
I love Brie Larson. I'm so glad she's in the MCU, but I'm still frustrated with them for not putting this movie out at the time that it should have happened.
Me too.
And then trying to get us to be happy that they made their first lady-led movie and have it be Captain Marvel, a person we had no history with when we had history with Black Widow for almost 10 years at that point.
We can even circle back to the whole, everything's about setup, because they had Captain Marvel have a solo movie because she's going to be the Deus Ex Machina of Endgame to come in and, like, blow up the ship. That's why they needed her. And so they're like, well, we need to introduce her. Let's have her have a solo origin movie. And I'm like, cool, it was a good movie. Where's Nats? And so I think that's also why a lot of people hated Captain Marvel, just because they were still mad about that, which I understand. But it's not about movie, and she's a good character. She wasn't written perfectly because she still has that whole, like, I'm a strong woman, which means I have to be mean. But honestly, I think I liked it. I like her character. I think it's a good.
I think I really liked her in Captain Marvel because I think Brie had put a lot of life into her. But I think in Endgame, she shot that before she shot the movie, so she didn't know much about the character yet, and they didn't tell her who she was talking to or the context. So in Endgame, she really just comes off as mean and
she does
snarky, which is not her. There's nothing that Brie Larson could have done about that. It's the Marvel machine trying to set up.
Exactly.
And I think they also cheapened our first female movie they cheapened that victory for us by having it be marketed as a feminist spectacle, even though it wasn't, because it only happened when it did because you failed to do it earlier. But they tried to act like them giving us the setup to keep us invested and keep us buying movies was a feminist victory.
Nope.
And yet, Brie Larson was still wonderful. I did enjoy the movie.
I did too. It was good.
Jude Law and Annette Bening are there.
Mm-hmm.
Coulson was back.
Miss him. Love him.
Oh, and Monica and Maria Rambeau. How could I forget?
Right? Because we got the Marvels coming up. So we have, we should do an episode on that too. That's a while. That's going to be a while. But like, we have all the Captain Marvels and Miss Marvel and all that stuff. So that'll be good. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't think anyone is happy that it came out this late, but I'm happy that it came out at all, which sounds bad because I'm like, at least we have it now. Well, like, at least we have it now. It should have come out earlier, but it was good, and I'm happy that we had that way to just say goodbye.
And I think I do have one more thing to say, mostly about the criticisms of this movie, rather than the movie itself, which is maybe a little tangential. But I think I would rather focus on this movie for what it does and what the woman that made it did, and also David Harbour. Props to him for just being willing to be the old sexist guy that's just like lumbering around. Takes a confident man to do that. But I would rather focus on how it was a loving tribute to our favorite female character, and it did genuinely make her the feminist that I think women and Scarlett Johansson have been seeing in her for a while.
Yes.
And so even though it didn't come out great and the corporate politics at play here are a little bit gross, it's a great movie, and I felt empowered while watching it.
I did too. I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is good.
Yeah. I would also like to say that I have heard a lot of, I texted you earlier because I was trying to listen to some podcast about this movie because I've been thinking about it and I wanted to listen to other people think about it. And all of the ones that I found had male hosts, and I listened to, NPR did one of their pop culture happy hours as a female host. So they just did like a 10-minute review of the movie. But I listened to one for a while and I quit it because it was 3 men talking about it, and they kept saying things like, why didn't this come out 4 years ago? Or why is this a movie for a character that's dead? But not hitting the point of ultimately why of that it was sexism and that they didn't think that the movie would do well because it had a woman lead.
Yeah.
And so in summary, I would just like to say that I only want to hear women talking about Black Widow unless you are going to be on the feminist train with the rest of us. Because looking at it as, hey, this movie doesn't fit into the MCU is very different than looking at it as, hey, this movie doesn't fit because they messed up at first.
It's also like, it's not about the MCU sometimes. Just watch the movie for the movie.
Exactly. Like, and watch the movie for the ladies.
Yeah, and I think that that's a huge downfall of, an episodic franchise is, how does this fit in or whatever? And, like, I always talk about this. We always talk about this. But, like, it's such a good movie, and it's so good on its own. So what if it doesn't fit in perfectly? At the end of the day, it's a comic book movie. It's a superhero movie. You can, like, think about it really lightly like that. You can also think about it as it's a commentary about how our world works today. And it's a love letter to Nat herself and also to fans of her that have been wanting this forever. So just let us have it.
Just like have it.
Just let us have it.
Also, if you're going to get at the questions that we're asking, actually get to them. Don't look at it as, oh, this messes up my ideas about who Julia Louis-Dreyfus is going to mean for the MCU. because she shows up in this movie.
I think it's just such a toxic way to think about the MCU in general. It's just, it totally takes out the story, the character. It strips everything away and just makes it all about, I'm a bigger nerd than you. I know what could happen next. This is what it's gonna be. I win. Like, I just feel like it's becoming a game now, and I'm really sick of the game. So I'm glad that you and I can talk about this and actually talk about the movie itself and what it is right now, because what it is a great movie.
Exactly. I would agree with that. Also, I would like to make a plea for everyone to go see this in theaters, because it was really fun in theaters, and it's just not the same watching things at home. And I know it's easy, but I don't want all the movie theaters to close, so please go see it in theaters.
Yes, please. Also, it's cheaper to see in theater, and it's worth it.
Exactly.
And then $30 to watch it on your laptop. I got a little popcorn tin. It's on my dresser now because I've never had a popcorn tin before, but I got this one because it was Black Widow themed. It has Black Widow and Taskmaster, and it's basically the size of a small trash can, and I love it so much.
That's so beautiful. I'm so glad you have it.
I know, I am too. It's just like one more thing I have to move, but it's worth it.
Totally worth it. You can put
totally worth it. I can put things in it. It's great. It'll be a little container for me.
It'll make moving easier, even.
It will. It will. I agree. I like that argument. I think you're right. But yeah, I just liked it. It was a good movie.
It's not perfect. We can pick any movie to shreds, but it was really visually beautiful, and the dynamics were wonderful. It was funny. It was a spy movie,
which was really cool. We haven't seen that in a while.
Exactly. It tried to fix like 15 years of sexism, so
it got pretty far, I'd say.
You know, it did its best. I would prefer to say that it succeeded.
I think it did. I genuinely do.
You know, the corporation is still lurking behind them, but in terms of movies, it justice for braids, justice for baby Elena.
Oh man, that was so sad.
Justice for Natasha Romanoff. Yes,
forever.
So thank you guys for listening to our conversation about Black Widow. Please let us know what you think in the comments. We especially love to hear from you on this one, because I think we are both really fired up about a lot of the aspects about this movie, both in terms of the plot and also in terms of what it means for movies going forward, the big meta topics like sexism that are surrounding it and the ways it talks about our real world. So if you guys have anything that you want to tell us, we would love to hear your thoughts, theories, feelings, opinions, etc. So please comment, send us an email at flixationpodcast@gmail.com, and of course like and subscribe so that we can keep making more episodes. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.